Hey everybody, today we have to talk about Ubisoft and their CEO Yves Guillemot. We're just going to refer to him going forward as Yves though.
The is this? Is this French? I can't f***ing read French.
On September 25th, an internal memo from Yves to the company leaked onto us, the public. In it, he talks directly to his staff on the goings-on, and let me tell you, it isn't good. His internal statements to his own employees are not facing the actual facts and reality. It's like he's doing PR speak to his own people. It's normal for these companies to do this very careful and very tactful corporate language to mask the facts when doing public statements or speaking to the press, like for example saying that a game didn't sell well according to expectations instead of saying that our game is fucked. Obviously we have eyes to see when they're being dishonest, but it is what it is. It's business. Corporations have to present this BS positive narrative out there onto the world and assure their current and potential future investors that everything is okay. But it's so weird seeing this in an internal memo. Reading the internal memo shows that the dishonesty runs deep within the company, like it's dishonesty, copium and pretendium all mixed into one, and worse, a total lack of accountability for all the crap that him and his higher-ups are personally responsible for. We'll get into those in the later points of the video. Here are some timestamps. We're going to be going through all of this and calling it out. If you like this kind of content, please consider subscribing to the channel, and if you have any suggestions for stuff that you would like to see, let me know in the comments. Now let's jump in. In his first statement he says that, first, Star Wars Outlaws' initial sales proved softer than expected, despite solid ratings from players that recognize the game's faithful transcription of the original trilogy's essence and richness. 76 on Metacritic, 3.85 out of 5 on PS Store, 4 out of 5 on Xbox, and 4.4 out of 5 on Epic. While players praised the sense of detail and the beauty of the graphics, the effectiveness of the reputation system, and endearing characters like Nyx, some also noted areas of improvement. The development teams are already hard at work on this, focusing on save issues, stealth mechanics, more frequent quest checkpoints, and better NPC AI. I'm confident that these updates will significantly improve the player experience by allowing us to deliver on its promise and make Star Wars Outlaws a must-play game and a long-term seller. In parallel, the publishing teams and developers are closely collaborating to increase the engagement with the game and boost player acquisition during Black Friday and the holiday season. Right off the bat, we have that soft language. Calling the initial sales of Star Wars Outlaws softer than expected is like saying that some aspects of Concord's initial launch didn't land the way that they intended. This is corporate copium language at its best. The issue is that, like I said, when it's for the press, it's expected, because you can just roll your eyes and just go like, yeah, right. But when it's internal, it's like, what the fuck are you doing? When you fail, you need to be able to address reality as it is if you want your company to have a future. You have to have a real grasp of how much you fucked up. You need to be able to admit it to yourself, and you need to be straight up with your staff and demand better of everyone involved. Hell, you even need to consider firing people when they are responsible for a failure of this magnitude. I believe that this is how Cyberpunk 2077 went from a disastrous launch to an overhaul and an expansion that flipped this game from a disaster story to one of success. Yves moves on to point out the game's ratings on Metacritic, PS Store, Xbox and Epic. First, let's just get this out of the way. Nobody cares about the ratings on the PS Store, Xbox and Epic. These are not the places that people go to get an informed opinion or review of a game. This is just a little tiny convenience on the store page. You can't take it seriously or as an example of whether or not people like the game. You can even write a proper review on these things. Metacritic itself is not a bad place to go by if you're taking the user score into account, but Yves only cited the critic score, which is completely useless to go by because we all know that most of these outlets have stopped knowing how to review video games a long time ago. Sometimes I say that these people are bought and paid for. When I say that, I don't mean that they're directly getting paid to write certain articles or reviews. What I mean is that these outlets are heavily influenced by the access that they have to these publishers, and they do anything that they can to maintain that access. So they're never going to be fully honest in their reviews when a game sucks. That's why these morons keep rating most of these bigger games between 7 and 10, and their articles are caked with that same sort of soft language Sometimes what studios need to not end up like Ubisoft is some good old-fashioned brutal honesty. But if these outlets do that and start handing out 3s, 4s and 5s out of 10, they are going to get blacklisted. And then, next time a new Star Wars game gets made, they're not going to be flown out to fucking Orlando for a nice visit to Disneyland, as they were for Star Wars Outlaws and for Jedi Survivor. Or they're not going to get invited to other lovely press events for other games, or simply get sent early access codes to review these games on time. Companies are not obligated to send out early copies of their products to reviewers, and so if you want to maintain access, you need to heavily moderate yourself and stay on their good side. It's the same with YouTubers. Creators like Angry Joe, for example, were getting blacklisted for being honest in their reviews, while certain other creators were fined by softening their language. Yves should have mentioned that Star Wars Outlaws has a fucking 5 on Metacritic because that's what the score is for people who are actually paying to play the game. And instead of that nonsense about areas of improvement, he should have mentioned utterly disastrous failures, because that's what describes the combat system, which he doesn't even mention, the terrible stealth mechanics and the utterly retarded AI. Good luck fixing and improving all of these issues in hopes of making this a must-play in the long-term seller in the future, when you are even afraid of addressing these issues with the adequate degree of seriousness that they actually require. Next, déclaration de conneries. In today's ultra-competitive market, players expect extraordinary experiences and ultra-polished games on day one. We need to continue to improve when it comes to fine-tuning our games and delivering outstanding gameplay. This is what will enable Ubisoft to create the best games in the industrie. Okay, what the fuck are you talking about? This man just keeps going down this road of delusional excuses that I just... Today's market is definitely competitive, there is no doubt of that, but it's actually so easy to succeed in it. You look at the nicest surprises of this year, such as Stellar Blade, Black Myth Wukong and Space Marine 2, and you don't even see anything special. These games aren't, the most advanced in the tech department, trying to deliver the most detailed character models with their pores showing and shit, the most detailed facial animations or the most in-depth textures, or the most advanced gameplay systems or expansive worlds, or ray tracing technology or super advanced AI. There's no such thing here. They're just fun games mostly focused on combat. Their stories aren't even anything that goes above and beyond in terms of like big brain plot either, and even if they were, it's your job to hire and demand better from your writers. The point is that these aren't anything that should not be reachable by a studio with the amount of money, experience and workforce that Ubisoft has. In fact, it's damn shameful that Ubisoft cannot reach this bare minimum of quality. These games are perfect examples of good management, of having people in charge who care more about making a good game than office politics or predatory monetization. They're examples of what passionate creators are able to achieve when their vision is clear and when their focus is on the right things, even if it's their first time creating something in the AAA space. And of course, examples of exactly what is missing at Ubisoft: proper management and focus on creating good games. Gamers aren't even that picky anymore. We've been beaten down by shit content for so long that we will literally take anything that is simple and good at this point. Are some of us assholes sometimes? Oh sure, but I think that as a collective we have been far more demanding in the past. Our demands have grown shorter and shorter as time went by. We will always appreciate and praise when a studio goes above and beyond, but it's not a foundational demand for them to do so. Yves is trying to paint this picture of gamers being so extremely picky and demanding that we expect extraordinary experiences and games so ultra-polished that they are nearly inconceivable. The truth is that we just expect good ones, and Ubisoft has fallen off so much, especially with Star Wars Outlaws, which is by far their worst game they've done in a while. I'll have a video on this soon, that they can't even meet the lowest expectations that we have for them. Ubisoft isn't even held up to the same standards as other companies within the industry. I don't even know how this guy has the balls to complain. They are like the fast food of this industry, except they are degrading so much that even fast food is becoming too good for them at this point. They're becoming like a fucking half-eaten, soggy sandwich that you find on the side of the road. Ubisoft has genuinely made great games in the past, but they never really created the best. He is incapable to address the dire condition that his company is in and prefers to enforce this delusion instead. He says that they need to continue improving. The truth is, they need to completely revamp the entire fucking process, because currently they're not even doing the thing that they're supposed to be improving upon. And a big part of that is Yves' own fault. This dude is responsible for games like Outlaws not getting delayed to at least get polished, and he's responsible for a whole lot of other shit that we're going to get into in the second half. He is responsible for fostering an environment in this company that went into the decisions made for the game to be this boring, bland, and uninspired. Star Wars Outlaws doesn't do a single thing right. The combat system isn't good enough to be able to identify itself as an action game, the stealth system isn't good enough to be able to identify itself as a stealth game, it's not an RPG focused on choices and roleplay either, and it's also not anything else of note, so it's just this blob of mediocrity, failing to apply itself enough in any area to carve an identity. Next statement of absurdité. Consequently, we decided to delay Assassin's Creed Shadows to February 14, 2025. The game is already playable and of high quality, okay, and has all the features the team wanted to integrate into this ambitious experience. This unusual decision at such an advanced stage is motivated by our desire to offer an optimal experience from launch on all platforms and various PC configurations, and to remove the small frictions we typically use to address in post-launch title updates. We will also use the extra time to complement the experience with a few high-impact secondary quests that will bring even more memorable moments. There is no way in hell that this game is of high quality. I'm sure it's playable, but this high quality part just looks like more internal BS. In the very footage that they released, we can see stiff facial animations on the protagonist, making Yasuke look like an animatronic robot, and even swords clipping through hands and scabbards in trailer footage. None of this is very encouraging. Delaying things for polishing them is always a good thing, but when it comes to Ubisoft, it's just a sign of something else under the surface, or a sign that the game is truly fucked up. Let's be honest here, these guys would rather sell you a pile of garbage that looks embarrassing rather than delay their game. Star Wars Outlaws is a perfect example of that, so this delay is suspicious at best. Next, plan de merde. The next statements aren't even really worth reading. Thank God, because I fucking hate reading these things. They want to put the game on Steam, which is good, it shows desperation, but it's good nonetheless. The Season Pass thing sounds like trouble though. When a company like Ubisoft rethinks their Season Pass model, they're not really thinking about how to offer more value to their players, they're just thinking about how to fuck them. But let's keep this in mind for just a little bit later in the video when we respond to someone else. This part here, though, is very interesting. They want to put players at the heart of their decisions, so I wonder, what is it that they have had at the heart of their decisions before that? You are a developer and publisher of video games. The players should have always been at the heart of your decisions, but they haven't been, and they never will be. They have been the furthest thing from the heart of these decisions. This is the kind of statement that makes this whole thing looks like it was written to be purposefully leaked. It's either that, or these people are so deep up their own asses that they are just totally lost and there is no way for them to ever recover. You simply cannot be this delusional. Yves should have gotten fired a long time ago, but if he doesn't get fired now, then I honestly don't care if Ubisoft burns. Here are just some of their lovely decisions from this year. One of their executives starts off the year by telling people to get comfortable not owning their games as we go into a more digital and subscription-based future. Soon after that, they removed the crew from their customers' digital game libraries and shut down the entire thing for everyone else. Yeah, straight up reaching into their paying customers' pockets and taking the game from them. You can't even play it in offline mode or in your own private servers with friends. The game is just gone. I'll remind you that this game came out in 2014. It was merely 10 years old and they deleted it. They also didn't provide the people they just stole from with a discount to buy the most recent The Crew game. They just took it and moved on. To make matters even worse, they implemented Always Online into Star Wars Outlaws and Assassin's Creed Shadows. Always Online requirements are the open door that Ubisoft needs to rip their games from their consumers by shutting down their servers and shoving all of them into subscription services. Never take the words of higher-ups at these companies lightly. If they proudly state that you as a consumer should not be comfortable owning their games and they don't retract their statements and apologize for them, it's because because they meant it. And fuck, even if they did apologize, they still meant it, and they're still going to try to do it. If not now, then a few years from now, when the industry is distracted with some other problem, or when you have grown complacent. If they do it once and get away with it, they will do it again. They also want to go into using AI for their games, which is just another stupid-ass decision on their part to turn their games from bad to even worse. A good studio can use AI responsibly as a tool to aid the developers. A shit company like Ubisoft is just going to use it to take as many shortcuts as possible and downsize their teams. If they're already deeming the state of Star Wars Outlaws as appropriate for shipping, I cannot even imagine what they're going to be releasing when they've got AI doing shit for them. Next batch of mensonges, and my favorite. Lastly, I'd like to address the recent polarized coverage around our creative choices. We are an entertainment company. As such, our objective is not to endorse any specific agenda. Our mission has always been to entertain the players and enrich their lives with original and memorable experiences that resonate with a global audience.
That is one big pile of shit.
But let's be fair. I think Ubisoft's choices make it very apparent that entertainment is not their sole concern. They associate themselves with Sweet Baby Inc. and have them help in development. Hell, they even got an ex-employee from Sweet Baby Inc. to spread misinformation about the backlash against Assassin's Creed Shadows through a New York Times article. You only associate yourself with these people when you are willing to put the entertainment value of your product in second place. And since they're also unhinged when it comes to monetization, I would say that they're placing the entertainment value in third place at this point. But sadly, it goes further down below that. Ubisoft is caked up to their fucking eyeballs with useless, cringy, bureaucratic nonsense that obsesses with race, gender, and sexuality. The degree of it is insane. For this man to have the cojones to write all of this crap in the memo when everyone inside their own studio knows full well that it isn't true and that they're working in an HR nightmare is insane. But we'll get into this in just a little bit on the buyout topic. First, let me just conclude this one, because even without all of this internal bullshit, these choices are already reflected in their games. Their choice to make a Star Wars game such as Outlaws and not let people create their own character using alien races and androids for a much more personalized experience, and instead lock it down to Kay-Vess and then have the actress spew nonsense about misogyny in the gaming industry, which is actually fucking hilarious considering that she's working for Ubisoft, who has a history of sexual harassment in the office, is very telling. Their choice to make an Assassin's Creed in Japan and for the first time not make the protagonist be from the actual country the game is set in is also very telling. I'm making a separate video on Yasuke and how Ubisoft mishandled the whole thing, which will go into a bit more detail on the issue of the historical inaccuracy and all that, but let's leave that for another day to save time. Outside of Yasuke himself though, there are loads of other issues too, with several things that are not historically accurate or even culturally accurate. Japan got very upset at this game, and I hope that Sucker Punch and Sony have been paying attention to it so that they can be responsible for what they're doing and not let Sweet Baby Inc. have control over the character, the world building, the story and the overall presentation in Ghost of Yotai. Sucker Punch did excellent work with Tsushima and was made a cultural ambassador to the real island of Tsushima. It is an advantage of theirs that their characters are strictly fictional and the presentation is also very stylized. It gives them more wiggle room in what to put in the game, but it doesn't shield them from backlash if they end up misrepresenting Japanese culture or history in insulting ways, especially if done through Sweet Baby Inc. or any other consultants that we know are involved with Sony and that have zero regard for the quality of the games they work in or respect for the culture. Their priority is the message and they do not care about anything else. Anyway, back to our boy Yves. The truth is that this narrative of his is useless. This is why I don't care when I read it, because these people do not regard us as their players. Their players are the gaming journalists and the excess media critics who blindly praise their games and stifle their criticism. The people who criticize them are just regarded as bigots. Such is the privilege of using race, gender and sexuality as shields when making video games caked in DEI. His last statement doesn't really merit any reading either. It's just a conclusion about bouncing back, determination, commitment, blah 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 blah, meeting the expectations of their growing number of passionate players in the long term. Yeah, good luck with that one, with all the terrible decisions you've been doing. Rumors are that this delay is to fix issues that the Japanese people were rightfully pissed off at. These people, who are supposedly simply an entertainment company, wanted to use the Japanese people, culture and history as a quick and easy stepping stone to virtue signal and score ESG points. I'll also never forget this stupid senior writer who justified the inclusion of a black samurai assassin instead of a Japanese one with the statement that there are too many white men leads. Honestly, I will never understand how these people operate. If you have nothing but a retarded statement to say, why say anything at all? Just don't talk about it, don't reach out, and just say no comment. In this statement, they just made it clear that the decision was indeed based in race and not a genuine desire to tell Yasuke's story, and worse, it didn't even make any sense. People weren't wondering why there wasn't a white man as a protagonist, they were wondering why the protagonist wasn't a Japanese man. Unless this moron is equating Japanese people to white people because of skin tone, which wouldn't even surprise me anymore. You'll always find a lot of racism and incomparable dumbassity in people who obsess over race and use it for disingenuous virtue signaling like this. And Ubisoft themselves have a pretty shameful track record with this stuff in Shadows. Not only do they shove in Chinese architecture and don't pay enough attention to actually present several facets of their culture correctly, but for Yasuke, they also go and put hip-hop beats as combat music. It's like, hey there, fellow black people, bonjour, you like hip-hop, do you not? Well, check this out. What else are you going to put in there? Are you going to make him invent basketball as well or something? Moving on. And now for the last point and the most important one. Apparently Ubisoft and Tencent are in conversations. Could be that Tencent will be buying the company. This isn't really good news. Tencent is not really a good company with the consumer's best interests in mind. Basically, I don't see things getting better with them in charge. But with how absurdly delusional Yves' internal memo is, I don't see things getting better on their own either. Yves is an incompetent fool who allowed one of the biggest and most successful companies in the gaming space to degrade into shit right in front of his very own eyes and right at the tip of his very own fingers. He allowed the quality control of his games to degrade into nothing, to the point where the bare minimum was deemed acceptable for release. He threw innovation out the window and didn't even bother to at least keep up with other studios. Instead, he outright replaced it with a comfort for mediocrity. He nurtured an environment of toxic positivity where things like internal criticism was deemed hostility in the workplace, further increasing the decline of quality in their games. By doing so, he fostered a work environment for fucking children, for lack of a better word that would likely get me demonetized. A work environment that placed socio-political ideologies ahead of basic values in game development, like good, aesthetically pleasing character designs, just so that a jar-worshipping freaks in the studios could feel happy and fulfilled for doing their bit in their delusional fight against this invisible enemy called the patriarchy and the male gaze. A work environment that sucked all the morale and joy right out of the art of game development itself, to the point where sending an exclamation mark could land you in a meeting with human resources. No matter how much Yves lies to himself or his staff, when you have staff members making decisions with their personal agendas in mind, or hiring agenda-driven DEI consultants, then his company automatically becomes driven by that agenda as well, and he never did anything to stop it either. Him and all these other fucking morons ahead of this company who don't deserve their jobs any more than Yves Guillemot fostered these environments. They nurtured all of this. They celebrated all of it, and even now, as this literally eats at the company through the inside, they still do not denounce it or step away from it. It is no wonder at all that Sweet Baby Inc. was born out of Ubisoft. That is where Kim Belair's company came from, and my god, isn't it just so apparent? The utter talentlessness, the inability to fucking write one single good story, the inability to involve themselves with AAA projects without actively making them noticeably worse, and most of all, the way they fostered these same unhinged toxic cultures within their own offices, or fucking sewers, or whatever the hell it is that these people work out of. For these crimes, Yves and every other executive that was involved in the destructive direction of this company over the course of the last decade should never be allowed to head any other company for the rest of their lives. Hell, I wouldn't even trust them in janitorial roles. They would faster start 10 different DEI programs than clean a single toilet. All of these people should always be known as failures who threw away every chance they had at changing the course of this company and leading it into a better future, because they had all they needed. Ubisoft was a brand brimming with opportunity. Ubisoft was filled with potential, with legitimately good IPs under their belt that could have made great games, and it was driven to the ground through a mix of greed, ambivalence, and incompetence. Greed is not unique to Ubisoft, far from it, but no other AAA company can quite match their penchant for mediocrity. They had so many years to fucking change the way that they do things, so many years of warning, but instead they kept looking at the critic scores from Metacritic and going, "Ah yeah, this is fine," while being reassured internally that they were doing a great job, and it's just a minority of haters who are being assholes, all while we kept growing more and more tired of their slop. The ideal situation here was if some other company bought them, kicked Yves and every single executive the fuck out, and all of these little groups and initiatives and programs and bureaus that do nothing for a company that's supposed to be making video games. God, video games! Look at this shit. Look at all of this. This is on their website. This is the person that they have setting the vibe and atmosphere at their studios. Read the whole page and you won't find a single thing that talks about the importance of making a good game. She even states that she isn't familiar with the industry and that it's her first time working in it. And she just goes off about all this trash as if she's running for governor of California or something, rather than working at a fucking company that makes video games. While it's normal to have HR departments in your gaming companies, what isn't normal is to let them take over to such an extent that, again, exclamation marks in messages become an offense. And with this lady here, the worst thing is that she even aims to change what it is that people perceive as talent. This woman's brain is so cooked that she sees race, gender, and sexuality in abstract concepts such as talent. She didn't like the fact that talented people, whoever the fuck they were being regarded as talented over her at her previous job. So she aimed to change the very definition of talent and carry it forward. And then people have the testicular capacity to tell me that there is no such thing as DEI hires and that DEI hires are not a problem, when time and time again we are met with more and more examples straight from the horse's mouth that their entire concepts of reality are warped. So warped that if put in a situation between hiring a talented young man, whoever the fuck it may be, they would rather hire a talentless fucking bucket that fits their diversity, equity, and inclusion metrics, while simultaneously redefining the very meaning of the word talent, and blaming you for not liking it. Who am I kidding? This company is just rotten all the way to the inside. One could say that, well, ideally someone could buy them, fire the clown in chief, fire all his entourage of executive clowns, plus all of these little clowns in high-up, useless positions such as these, and then either let the studio heads go along with them or keep them on a short leash to make sure that their habits of doing the bare minimum and expecting praise for it would be a thing of the past. But would it even work? Would it even be enough? Would it even be worth the actual trouble to do so? I mean, just look at this. Look at these divisions and subdivisions within divisions. So many separate departments making money off of the same nonsense without adding a single thing of value to the actual function of making games. And I don't mean making money for the company, I mean these people in these positions are making money, you know, they're getting paid to be in these positions doing fucking nothing. So no, I don't think it would be enough. I think this is ingrained at this point, and even if it wasn't, there really is nobody out there that can buy them anyway. Once upon a time, Microsoft might have actually been a runner-up for this at some point, but not anymore. Not after blowing like $70 billion on buying Activision and finding themselves now in financial trouble because of all of these acquisitions, haven't done shit without someone competent at the helm, making sure that good games were being made and released in a consistent manner. Another company that comes to mind would be the Embracer Group, but they're no peach either. If one of your game flops under them, your ass goes to the chopping block. Sony also kinda comes to mind. They bought Insomniac a few years ago, and Bungie and Firewalk in recent memory, but they just lost $400 million on the biggest gaming embarrassment to date. One could argue that 2024 is the absolute worst year for this to be happening to Ubisoft. It's a year that started with a bunch of layoffs and a bunch of project cancellations and even some studio shutdowns. So yeah, Ubisoft is totally cooked. Star Wars Outlaws will not save them, and Assassin's Creed Shadows can't save them either when their losses are this big. Please don't forget how they released Skull and Bones earlier this year, which died in about 2 weeks. It's just too much demand, even if Shadows ended up being good. Tencent may really be the only option that they have here, and it is likely that it will mean the end of their franchises as we know it, even though, to be honest, they've been in decline for a while now. As much as I love dragging Ubisoft because of their terrible decisions over the years through comments and posts on my own social media, I believe that everyone who has ever made content on them, be it on YouTube or be it on criticizing them elsewhere, only did it because we cared. Because more than anything else, we just wanted more good games to look forward to. We wanted to be excited for a new Assassin's Creed again. We wanted to see Far Cry become more than just an empty, vapid, open-world pew-pew template. We wanted Watch Dogs to grow and embrace its potential. We wanted a studio and company with integrity and a focus and quality so that when tackling other licenses like Avatar and Star Wars, they wouldn't just turn them into more Ubislop shit. So the conclusion: Ubisoft should have fucking listened and straightened themselves up. Now it's too late. Their ship is sinking and there is no one with a rope long enough to pull them ashore. I for one, when I see 57 different varieties of the same Assassin's Creed mobile game or new and somehow even worse Assassin's Creed games filled to the brim with monetization, will take a moment and mourn moments such as these.
It is a good life we lead, brother.
The best may never change.
And may it never change us.
You'll be able to help. What have you done?
When my people go to war, a hatchet is buried into a post to signify its start. When the threat is ended, the hatchet is removed.
You could have used a tree.
Don't die on my account. Go.
This is such a pain in the ass. Damn it. You should have been the one to outlast me.
I've done my part. Will you?
If you came with me, I could. Mary.
I'll be with you, Gilroy. I will.
I will mourn for what was and what could have been, but I will not mourn for what this company became. And before someone comes on the comments and says that this is mean because so many people will lose their jobs and blah blah blah, know this beforehand. I don't care. This isn't a poor little studio, victim of their surroundings or a victim to extraordinary circumstances out of their control within the industry. There is no gaming industry crash going on right now. The industry itself records massive growth over the last decade. There are more and more gamers hungry for good content every year. It's just that companies like Ubisoft are simply choosing to commit mistake after mistake after mistake, despite constant lesson after lesson after lesson of what it is that we want as the paying customers and what it is that we do not want. This is a company that made its own bed, filled it with parasites, and nurtured an unworkable work environment that placed the actual development and quality standard of their video games in like 10th place down the list of their priorities, while prioritizing a bunch of useless, baseless Californian shit for narcissists who don't even care about game development to begin with, but who couldn't find a spot for themselves anywhere else that actually mattered. So they went on to playing pretend in companies like Ubisoft and many others, while making a lot of money doing nothing. We see Sony and consequently all of their studios going down the same road. We see Microsoft in the same position. We see Square Enix constantly trying to cover their own ass with this stuff too. We see EA not giving a fuck about what's being done with Dragon Age Veilguard right now, turning it into something barely recognizable to its own audience. Hell, we even see CD Projekt Red, the last fucking company that I ever expected to see going down this road, fall victim to the same parasitical shit that, if left unchecked, will spell their end, just as it has with Ubisoft. It is their choices that leads down these paths. Their choices to spend money and resources on garbage like this, rather than focusing on making good games. So no, if anyone asks, I don't care. I couldn't care less, even for the words of this Stevie Chassard. First and foremost, fuck off. You're a monetization director. You shouldn't even be talking all this talk, acting like you're so above it all, so virtuous and morally superior, when you're the type of guy whose job it is to fuck consumers' wallets, shoving predatory monetization through cut content and lazy reskins, and even recallers sold at prices as high as $8, or other randomly assorted garbage in other Ubisoft games, like season passes on top of season passes. I'll talk about all of this shit in another separate video. This would get way too long if I laid out everything I think of Ubisoft. Point is, Stevie, you should be ashamed for a lot of things, but not for being part of a community that is being vocal about what they like and what they don't like. The games your company made sucked. In part thanks to you, by the way, Monsieur Monetisation. You have no moral high ground, you have nothing to defend. The games, mediocre. The president, incompetent. The higher-ups, parasites. The culture within, toxic and focused on all the wrong things. Only people I feel sorry about are those types of developers who speak out against these kinds of things, like the ones who spoke to Legendary Drops. Developers who just wanted to make good games, but instead were met with a ridiculous work environment, terrible quality control, and a complete disregard for the medium itself. Personally, I would be ashamed of all of that instead. Ashamed of working at a company where an exclamation mark or the lack of a fucking emoji is enough to get someone called into a meeting with HR. But hey, that's just me. Best of luck to you in your future endeavors, coming up with ways to stick it to the paying customers, Stevie. I got some great ideas for monetization, by the way. Feel free to contact me on my business email on screen right now. I wish I could have ended this on a lighter note, I really do, but, well, it's a terrible day for rain. Thanks for watching. If you liked the video, do consider liking and subscribing for more. It would really help me out. And if you have any thoughts on this matter or suggestions or anything else, I'll be hanging out in the comments. Have a good day, and I'll see you on the next one.